Says the new TV not working yet.
No, I have to call and get it scheduled.
Anybody
Brightens it up. Is that you're doing the lights?
Huh?
Is that you're doing the lights?
No, I didn't touch them. I just dark.
We're at 6:30.
I like them.
We're up and live. Yep. Well, I called to order this regular meeting of the Sturgis Common Council, Monday, April 3rd already. First item's approval of agenda.
Second.
Got a first by Beck and a second by Tony. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes. Yes.
Opposed to no. We've got an agenda. Item 3 is Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand, remove cover, and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Informational reports are included in the packet. What is with the printed packet and what I want to note to memorialize is the annual survey by the library for the Sturgis Public Library. There is a hard copy that we can get you if you so desire, but it is included in the packet and electronically available. Item 5 is announcements and praise. I'd like to take a moment and pray if you'd like to join me. Heavenly Father, we praise you and hope that we can live each day to bring glory to you. We appreciate the upcoming moisture, and we pray that everybody stays safe. We thank you for our employees, especially the EMS, and all they do with the emergency services throughout town and making our town safe and a great place to live. Lord, we thank you for our blessings, and in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I've got a proclamation for EMS week coming up in May. It's dark up here, so it's hard to read, but I didn't print it good enough. Whereas the emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of emergency medical teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves their survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas emergency medical service system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency room nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers. And whereas the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize this value and the accomplishment of emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week. Now therefore, I, Mark Carstensen, the Mayor of the City of Sturgis, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 21st through the 27th, 2023 as the theme. This is EMS Week, Emergency Care Begins. I encourage the community to observe the week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Our crews work hard to provide great stuff throughout town, and that'll be coming up in May, but it's a proclamation we do yearly. How about council? Anything to add under announcements and praise?
At our last meeting, I talked about how many kids we were taking to state for the AAU tournament, which was 37. And we had about 18 of those kids, or half of them, end up placing at state. We had 4 state champions, 2 girls state champions, and 2 boys state champions, a couple of runners-up, and a couple other placings throughout the board. But it was a good showing for Sturgis in Aberdeen.
What is the age bracket?
All the way from 6 and under to 14 and under.
Wow.
Appreciate that.
Got them for years. Good job.
Right. Good system to create a quality program. Anybody else have anything to add for announcements and praise? Item 6 is Public Works update. Rick is coming up to speak to us, and I think you started these when we reignited this process with the department head update. So back to you at the beginning.
Think you're right, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it's always, it's different to be at the beginning of the agenda versus at the end. So thank you for that, and thanks for your opportunity. I wanted to just give you a quick overview of the Public Works Department. This has been, something that we undertook here. Geez, it's probably been longer than I think some of you on the council were a part of it when we consolidated Public Works. Right now, we currently have 7 divisions. Within those 7 divisions, some of them are multiple divisions. We have a total of 14 what I call units. Some of those would be park, cemetery, sanitation, rubble site, wastewater. We have both collections and treatment. So we have multiple facets of Public Works. We currently have about 40 full-time employees, and currently we actually have vacancies in our wastewater, water, rubble site, streets, and fleet. So certainly are down some full-time employees, and we hope to fill those vacancies. One of the things that'll be coming up in the near future for discussion is we were recently notified that we were going to have to start paying a tonnage fee to take our cardboard recyclables to the material handling facility in Rapid City. Reason this is because the cost to provide that service has severely outrisen the profitability of it, and it really is costing the city of Rapid City a lot of money, no different than us, to handle that material. The commodities really 2, 3, 4 years ago tanked, and they have not came back. And right now it costs more to be able to handle that material, get it to a regional facility where it can be recycled, no matter whether that's cardboard, plastic, glass. We just simply in western South Dakota, we don't have those facilities, and they're not even nearby. So the cost to truck those materials, it just outweighs what profitability there was in that. So something we'll certainly be having further discussions on in the near future, but wanted to update you on that. Also, we did just receive our 2022 drinking water report, which can be found on the city's website. Just a brief overview of that. The South Dakota Drinking Water Program is a part of the Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources, which develops and enforces the South Dakota drinking water regulations that apply to all public water systems. Currently, there's approximately 645 public water systems that exist in South Dakota. The city of Sturgis is one of those. To date, the city of Sturgis has supplied 18 consecutive years of safe drinking water to the public. And has been awarded the Secretary's Award for Drinking Water Excellence by the Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources. And that's something to be pretty proud of. 18 years of, that means that we have not failed a sample, have not failed a test, have not failed an inspection in 18 years. Currently, the city serves more than 6,943 customers, with an average of 878,000 gallons of water per day that comes out of our wells. The water quality report does list all of the drinking water contaminants, if any, were detected during the 2022 year. And the state does require us to monitor for contaminants less than once a year because of the concentrations of it. Some of the other projects that Public Works currently has going on, I wanted to give you an update on. This year, our Parks division did construct and build 4 more raised beds. We did that last year, so in the last 2 years, we've added an additional 8 garden beds to our community gardens. We do have hopes in the upcoming year to possibly be looking at a third location. Currently, we have our city park location, our ballpark location, and we're looking for a third. We've got a couple of sites identified, and hopefully we can work with that organization because it seems to be a very well-used program. The 7th Street crossing, as of today, we had 13 barrel sections installed in place of 30, so almost halfway there. They did set the cutoff walls today, so that got done. And the project is still on target for a July completion. So That's a project that we look forward to seeing done, and I think it'll be a huge improvement for our community. The banner pole project, as of today, all of the poles on Junction and Main have been removed. The only poles that exist that are still a part of this project are the ones on Ballpark right there at the railroad crossing. Also, currently, 5 sets of those poles have been drilled and the foundations poured. So they'll continue to do that as weather permits along the remainder of Main Street. And that project is still scheduled to be completed in June. City Park crossings, we did hire a consultant on that project. They are right now pursuing possible solutions. We met with FEMA. Our hopes are that we don't have to remove those crossings. I think we have some opportunities to make that happen. The Anna Street Clomar is still ongoing. We anticipate seeing our comments back from FEMA probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll be working diligently on that. The Vinacker Canyon Bike Path should be starting up. I did get notification from the DOT here a couple of weeks ago. They've got some problems they're working through with the contractor, but hopefully we'll see that kicking off here this spring and get that finished up. That will tie in to the Raccoon Road bike path that exists in front of the state shop there. So look forward to getting that one done. The Highway 14, I guess is what we're calling it for now, the bike path that extends from Short Track Road, Moose, whatever you want to call it, and goes to the west out to the trailer parks on the south side of Lizelle. Plans, we got a plan review on that just the other day. Plans on that are at 70%, so we're making some progress on that as well. Moose Drive reconstruction and bike path. We've been working on that in-house. That's going to be an in-house design with our engineers. They're probably at 90% on that. We had 2 affected landowners that we met with last week to shore up a couple of easements we needed for drainage. We're going to be adding, I believe there's 7 new storm drain inlets, a lot of pipe, reconstructing that road, and then the bike path that will connect down into Dolan Creek and into the bike path by Bear Butte Creek. So we'll be making that connection and that tie. But that project is about ready. We have some coordinating efforts we have to do with the DOT because part of that bike path will be a LTAP grant as well. So we'll be working diligently on that. East Avenue and David Drive, we do have a third-party consultant that's working on that. As we noted when we first got that project going, it would take several months due to weather because they have some surveying cross-sections, different things to do. Might be good timing to see what's going on there because the snow we're going to get is probably not going to last long and it's going to melt rather quick. So be curious to see what they come up with. The aquatic park project is slated for a council presentation on April 17th by the developers. I think you guys will all be impressed with what they have to show you. Pine Glen improvements, that water and sewer project is done. Next week we're having a kickoff meeting. About the only thing we have left is we have one final abandonment in a water line to make and then final grading and pavement. So look forward to getting that one done. That should be a good project. We've been making some ADA improvements. We've got some sidewalk on Arizona and Ballpark by the community garden. Our crews are gonna be doing that, making some ADA improvements there, adding that sidewalk. Another good project. So well, number 8 in the north storage tank, the consultants working on that. We're currently doing the review, lost my train of thought. The cultural resources review on that, and then that one will get really going underway. So we'll have some more information on that in the near future. Continue to work on that West Avalanche trunk line. I think we've got some solutions that we'll be presenting to the council here in the near future that will make that work. And then we just have a number of private developments that we're working on, plan review and inspections. Garden Grove, or Davenport as it's often referred to, phase 3 of that's going to be happening. I think you're taking some action on that tonight. Hidden Hills, which is that West Avalanche trunk line, we'll be seeing that in the near future. The Davenport Development Group, which is the Richards property, that one will be coming up in the near future. So we should have some exciting private development to show you in the very near future as well. Kind of some of our right around the corner things are, of course, we've got cleanup week is May 1st through the 5th. Usually that ends up taking us about 2 weeks, but we'll hopefully weather will hold off and we can get that one done. And then as soon as we get that done, we really start looking at our curb and gutter painting and our parking stripes and lane striping. Those will be projects that we're working on internally. We do have quite a few small concrete projects we're going to be doing, on the both. We have some curbs to repair and we have some bike path sections. We have one really bad one down in the city park. We did remove a tree last week down there that has pushed up the bike path probably about 16, 17 inches. So we got 4 panels to take out there and we'll get them leveled back out. So then we'll be right into the swing of our spring mowing and irrigating and getting ready for Memorial Day and all that fun stuff. We do tentatively as well, before I forget, we have a meeting scheduled. Hopefully sometime, the dates have been thrown out as early as next week or the following week, to have a pre-construction meeting on the Dolan Creek, Ferguson, Hurley Drive project with Gustafson and their engineer, so that we can work that out. We will probably be reporting back to council. They have agreed to work with us on the traffic control plan, so I don't have any concerns at this point in time. Dolan Creek will remain open at all times, at least a lane of traffic. If we have to do it with flaggers or whatnot, Dave Gustafson and I have visited about that, and he's committed to doing that. So I don't think we'll have near the traffic problems that we thought, but we should have a kind of a finalized plan on that here in the next few weeks as well. With that, I'm going to keep it pretty short so that I know everybody wants to get home tonight before the snow starts. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Any questions?
Great report, Rick.
Thanks.
Take all night to cover everything. And I have one question,
Sure.
and that's just when does the yard waste drop-off location open back up?
Good question, Kevin. Typically, it will be April 15th, and as of right now, I don't see why that will not happen. I think, looking at the extended forecast, we jump up into the high 70s here pretty quick. So I think that will happen, and definitely the grass will be growing. So yeah, April 15th is kind of, and I don't know what that date is, but usually it will probably start on a Monday, whatever that Monday is, close to April 15th.
Thank you.
So,
Well, if you're doing cleanup beginning of May, that's when it'll snow again, so.
right.
That's true.
Appreciate it, Rick. Item 7, the city manager's report, and Mr. Ainsley has an empty docket tonight at his last city council meeting for Sturgis, so we appreciate all you done, and that report was great, Daniel. Item 8 is consent calendar. We have approval of consent, and then we have setting a bunch of public meetings along with our minutes. Does council wish to remove any of those items and discuss them individually? How about anybody in the public wish to remove any consent calendar items and discuss them individually? None being heard, is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
We got a first by Preston and a second by Mike. Any last discussion? We'll go ahead and roll call for the minutes. Preston, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
I'm yes. Mike?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
And Becca?
Yes.
Consent calendar is approved to its entirety. Item 9 is claims. Questions, comments, concerns from council on the claims? How about public input on the claims? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Got a first by Dean,
Second.
second by Kevin. Any last discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That carries unanimous. For the roll call, please. Item 10 is Board of Adjustments for Variance, Use on Review, or Other Administrative Appeals. I believe Mr. Marshall was going to give us a brief procedural update. Is that correct, Mr. Marshall?
Yes, it is, Mr.
All right,
Mayor.
I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As members of the city council, you often wear different hats. Most of the time, in fact, almost all of the time, you function as legislators. You make legislative style decisions by which the city is governed. Sometimes, however, you sit in a different capacity, a capacity as a quasi-judicial officer. And when you sit in that capacity, there are constraints on how you can function. An example of the quasi-judicial capacity is when you entertain requests for variances, conditional use permits, and uses on reviews. The rules are different. When you function in that capacity as a judicial, quasi-judicial hearing officer, your decisions are to be based only on the evidence that's presented before you in this hearing room. So in those circumstances, it's typically and almost universally considered bad conduct is a little strong, but you shouldn't be going out and doing your own investigation. Because if you do your own investigation, then you deprive parties to that appeal, parties to that process of their ability to know the basis on which part of the decision is made. So when one starts that kind of proceeding, it's typical to announce or request conflicts of interest. If you may have some sort of financial interest in the project, as well as whether you have had discussions about the project with any party to the proceeding. So if I'm presenting a request that I want to buy and do something on property in Sturgis, and I talk to Mike about it, for example, Mike should not participate as a member of the Board of Adjustment when that comes up for a variance. Instead, as I said, those decisions are should be based exclusively on what you hear and see in the hearing room. Another thing that is different, perhaps, in how you've conducted these in the past is the parties to these have rights of appeal, and they are by a special process known as a writ of certiorari. That's a fancy way of saying that the record that you create during this hearing is called to the circuit court, and the circuit court reviews it to determine whether there was error. So to facilitate that review and actually provide something for review, I will be providing recommended findings of fact, conclusions of law, and an order to you, hopefully before the hearing, not just in favor of the Planning Commission's recommendation, but one for each side, so as not to favor the Planning Commission, regardless of how they rule, or create any sense of prejudice on behalf of the applicants. But it will help focus your decision-making process on the factors to be considered for variances, use on reviews, and conditional use permits. So I think that touches most of those bases. It is different than how you've conducted yourself before, and I am willing to take a lot of responsibility for that. But on the other hand, these protections created by procedure work to the benefit of all the citizens of Sturgis and are not designed to prejudice anyone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Appreciate that input and helping us perfect our procedures. So with 10.1, or with 10 with the Board of Adjustments, I would adjourn the council meeting to meet as Board of Adjustments for the following agenda item. At this point in time, I'd like to request any conflicts of interest solely on the setback for the addition at 2700 Whitewood Service Road. Do we have any declared conflicts of interest from the council on that variance? Mr. Smith, you want to join us now, sir, and give us your staff review? This is part of what the factual basis you're talking about, Mr. Marshall, and as far as the staff brings forward ordinance and law. Go ahead, Dave.
The item before you is a consideration for a variance to the setback at 2700 Whitewood Service Road. The background information is this. JBB Ventures, LLC, has requested a 15-foot variance to the 35-foot front setback for the property located at 2700 Whitewood Service Road. Excuse me. The property is owned highway service. The applicant intends to build an addition to the existing building for a wash bay, and this is a service wash bay, as seen in the exhibit, with less than the required setbacks. The type of construction and setbacks requested require variance approval. The property is currently described as Lot B of Lot 3 of Lot MK4 of Brink Subdivision, City of Sturgis, Meade County. The applicants have requested the variance to allow a 480 square foot wash bay in addition to be built on the front of the current building. Title 1805-12 Highway Service Zone. Setbacks require 35-foot front setback. The existing building is exactly 35 feet from the front property line. The proposed addition will be attached to the existing building. Staff anticipates no negative impact for the neighboring property owners. A total of 7 landowner forms were sent out. 2 paper responses and 2 phone calls were received back. No negative comments were made, and all approved the request. This is an allowable permitted use under 1805-12.
Thanks, Dave. Any questions for staff from council at this point in time? How about public input on this matter? Any input on the 2700 Whitewood Service Road variance request? None being heard. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Marshall, you're reaching for your microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may,
Please.
I would like to take this opportunity to remind you as members of a Board of Adjustment that state statute allows variances as will not be contrary to the public interest, where owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship, such that the spirit of the ordinance would be observed and substantial justice done. So that is the standard by which you are to measure these applicants' applications for variance. It charges you to consider substantial justice, the public interest, at the same time with a reminder that it be consistent as much as possible with the spirit of the ordinances which is sought to be varied. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Appreciate it. Mr. Marshall? I think even further in our ordinances and in communication with the planning and zoning, we've even listed other things that I believe include topographical, blight, and one other one.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, those fall under the special conditions to which
Right.
the statute refers.
Yep. Any further discussion on 2700 Whitewood Service Road from this Board of Adjusters. How about public input? Last chance. Someone willing to make a motion?
A motion to approve. I'll second.
We have a first by Tony and a second by Preston. Any last discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries with the approval of the variance. Item 10.3 is a request for 1800 Main Street. I make the same offer on this agenda item. Is there a declared conflict of interest from anybody on the Board of Adjustments?
I have a question for
Go ahead.
Mr. Marshall. So what about if we, as members of council, receive emails from residents regarding whatever that topic is? I mean, is that, because that's outside the hearing room?
I would encourage you to forward those emails to planning and zoning so that they may be made part of the record.
Okay.
I would also encourage you not to engage in any discussion about them, but simply, if someone wants to communicate with you, note the communication, forward it, and allow it to become part of the hearing process that way.
So then would it be a conflict if I have received an email and, I mean, there wasn't any conversation back and forth?
Can I make it specific to the variance person requesting the variance, and then there's the people we reached out to in the neighborhood that reaches out to us? I just want to differentiate those two.
I think that's an important distinction, Mr. Mayor. In a perfect world, I would prefer that those people direct their comments to planning and zoning, but I know that this isn't a perfect world, and that may be something that's only going to exist on my wish list.
Well, I personally I believe it's pertinent that I declare a conflict of interest because over this time I've worked with Mr. Edson in a process to trying to find a resolution. So I think that directly makes me declare a conflict of interest. So at this point in time, to be not part of the conversation and part of the voting, I would turn it over to Councilor Forrester as the president of the council to now chair the Board of Adjusters. So it's all yours, Kevin.
If I may, Mr. Forrester. The phrase conflict of interest makes people feel like they're doing something dirty or untoward. That simply isn't the case. And what you have announced is not what I would technically describe as a conflict of interest, but you have received ex-party communication. Ex-party communication meaning that which didn't take place before the council as a whole. So thank you for being courageous to announce that. I mean, it's hard to say, but it's in the best interest of the public that people be just as candid as you were, Mr. Mayor, in saying, I've had discussions, and those discussions lead me to believe I shouldn't participate. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional conflicts to be disclosed? All right, hearing none, I would like to say that on this presentation, we are definitely addressing not the zoning of the property, but we're addressing the requested footprint of a building on a property that is zoned properly for the business. Is that an accurate statement?
That is correct.
Thank you. I think we're ready to proceed with the presentation by the City Building Planning and Zoning Director, excuse me.
So the item before you is a setback variance request for 1800 Main Street from Tim and Jill Edson. Mr. Marshall pointed this out, but as part of my presentation, I'll run through it again. Keep in mind in determining variance requests, the Board of Adjustment must specifically address certain criteria when determining whether to grant or deny a variance request. The Board of Adjustment must address the specific criteria in their oral and written decision. The variance criteria are special circumstances or conditions exist, such as exceptional narrowness, topography, or relaxation of the zoning ordinance provides a quantifiable benefit to the city and the surrounding neighborhood. B, strict application of the zoning ordinance would deprive the applicant of any reasonable use of his land, create a hardship, mere loss in value does not justify a variance. There must be deprivation of beneficial use of the land. C, the variance provides the minimum adjustment necessary for the reasonable use of the land, and by granting a variance, it is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance and will be injurious to the neighborhood, detrimental to the public welfare, or in conflict with the comprehensive plan. The request is, as it pulls out, is a 12-foot variance off the vacated 8th Street or the property line on that side, the 15-foot variance off the alley, and a 1-foot variance off of the 8th Street. The property is currently described as Lot E plus the west 33 feet of vacated 8th Street and Block 7 of Ash's Extension, parcel 01510719. The applicants have submitted a site plan to build a 50 by 70 shop to operate their welding business. As you can see up there is the site plan showing the setbacks requested. When 8th Street was vacated, the property owners received equal halves, so the zoning resorts to the adjoining property. In this case, one side was medium-density residential, the other being highway service. When you vacate, split down the center. Each zoning goes with that piece of property. The property is a 16,000 square foot vacant lot zoned as highway service and abuts a residential property to the east. Title 180512 of the City of Sturgis Ordinance states, when a highway service district abuts a residential zoned area, the side yard shall not be less than 25 feet. The property is located on the corner of 8th Street and Main Street. The ordinance requires a 35-foot front setback, 18-foot side lot setback for corner lots in a highway service district. 8th Street is the primary access for the neighborhood and businesses located to the southwest of the railroad crossing, so the site triangle must be retained for public safety. Just a bit of clarification there. In highway service, the 18-foot side setback doesn't exist. It's actually a 25-foot on both sides. But since we told the applicant it was 18, that's what we're sticking with. The sewer main, an 8-inch sewer main is located near the northwest corner of the property. Given the proximity to the city sanitary sewer main, 12 feet on either side of the center would be the minimum amount of distance needed to make line repairs and get large excavating equipment in place. Digging vertically to the main lines at a depth of 8 foot plus could also possibly pose a threat to the stability of the ground adjacent to the proposed structure or the structure's foundation, and consideration should be given. A sewer main line takes much longer to excavation footprint for repairs than does a service line. As you can see on that up there, you can see where the sewer line crosses the property. There's the manhole, and then over the other end up top, there's the other manhole. So it just makes an angle right across that corner of the property. The next slide is going to show your zoning. Shows that that property is highway service. It does butt against residential and highway services on the other side. So is this an allowable use? Generally, highway service is found in Title 1805-12 of the zoning ordinance and enumerates the following relevant permitted uses. All those uses permitted in General Commercial 1, General Commercial 2, but not to include single-family homes, service and repair garages. 1805-12, Section B, additionally, General Commercial 1 is found under Title 1805-09 and allows service and repair establishments, excluding automotive, motorcycle, and truck repair as a permitted use. The primary question is whether the welding shop falls under the definitions of either a service and repair establishment or service and repair garage. Article 2 of Title 18 provides the definitions for the zoning districts and provides definitions for business service, business and service type heavy, and garage repair. Business service is defined as any activities conducted for gain which render service primarily to the commercial and industrial enterprises, or which service and repair appliances and machines used in homes or businesses. Business service type heavy is defined a business which may sell goods at retail, having substantial portion of its volume devoted to the retail of automotive or other motor-driven equipment, machinery, or parts, including the fabrication thereof, but not for wholesale trade, and businesses dealing in building materials, woodworking, dry cleaning, and the like. Garage repair is defined as a building which contains facilities for the care, servicing, and or repair of motor vehicles. While the exact use of the welding shop is not clear, staff has determined it falls under the business service definition because they are likely providing a service rather than selling goods at retail. Also, the shop is likely servicing and repairing appliances and machines used in the home or business as provided under the definition. If the shop is not working on motor vehicles, then the shop falls under the service and repair establishment. These permitted uses under General Commercial 1 at this is also permitted under highway service. Alternately, if the shop does provide work on motor vehicles, then it likely also falls into the service and repair garages, which are permitted use under Highway Service 1. While there's a definition for business service type heavy, it appears that this definition is not used in conjunction with general industrial or with any other zoning district. As there is no difference between the service and repair garages as provided in both Highway Service 1 and General Industrial 1, then both are permitted under both zoning districts. Essentially, the welding shop is permitted in highway service as requested. However, any variance to setbacks is a separate issue for the Board of Adjustment to consider under Title 18, Article 7, Section 3. Now, neighboring landowners. Several landowners with the notification zone have verbally addressed concerns regarding the proposed use of the property, as well as the physical encroachment into the 25-foot side setback. Written testimony is in the staff report and the council's packet. 16 landowner letters were mailed. 50% or 8 came back unapproved. 6.25% or 1 was approved, and 43.75% or 7 were not returned. Several phone calls were received from neighbors outside the 200-foot perimeter, which also strongly opposed the variance. Comments included, the similar request was denied 1 year ago, not enough changes from denied requests to support an approval, would present a hardship and negatively affect neighbors' lives and property values, would be an extreme nuisance. The next slide shows you different sizes of shop that they could put on the property without having to request any variances. These are within the allowable setbacks. The Planning Commission Board met on March 7th, 2023, the meeting, and made recommendation to deny the request as submitted. Planning Commission Board unanimously denied similar setback request in March 8th of 2022. On April 4th, 2022, council motion to deny was made by Councilor Jordan and seconded by Councilor Wilkerson. Members present carried it unanimously. And just a recap of what the request is for the variances, the sides, off the rear, and the other side. Are there any questions for me at this time?
Any questions? Thank you, Dave. Mr. Marshall, I'd like to refer back to you for the procedure for taking testimony now.
This time, Councilor Forrester, the board may entertain and take testimony from interested persons, from the applicants, but before doing so, because they've not filed a written report such as that you've received from Mr. Smith, it would be appropriate to ask them to take the oath to tell the truth. I
Very
would be
good.
happy to administer that oath if you would like me to.
So the procedure would be to call anybody interested in testifying on this matter up to take the oath in front of you. Or can they do it from their chair?
They may stand in place.
Very good. So anybody in the audience that is intending to testify on this variance request, would you please stand so that Mr. Marshall, the city attorney, can administer the oath?
Do you and each of you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with the applicants.
You guys already did something, or Dave did some different things that I wasn't expecting, so some of this stuff I don't need to bring up. So, I just want to make it known to the neighbors and you guys, as if this zoning or this variance request is denied, then I'm gonna have no other choice but to build a smaller shop on that property that doesn't require a variance. So that's me having to protect my investment that I got into the place right now. There's a couple issues with it, one being the sewer line that went across there, that there was never a easement on. There's never been an easement recorded or a right-of-way recorded on it. Had I known that was there, I wouldn't have bought it to begin with. But now that it's there, that's something that's gotta be dealt with. I mean, either the city and I gotta work something out and, for me to go somewhere else, or, you guys are gonna have to buy a easement from me, and I'll just, either put this building up that I'm asking for a variance, or if it gets denied, I'll end up putting up a smaller shop. So, if that's the case, if doing a smaller shop is the case, then, to be honest with you, the neighbors aren't gonna like that either. So, that's where I stand, and Jill, my wife, has something else to add that came up during, we weren't ready for, so.
Well, I had all kinds of stuff prepared, but Mr. Smith kind of shot a hole in it. So we do understand that the neighbors don't want the variance approved because they don't want our business there, despite the fact that it's zoned for it, and obviously it's allowed. Given the fact that that sewer line cuts off the entire corner of the property, and given the 12 feet on each side or whatever it is that needs to be maintained or can't be built on. If you look at the variance definition that's in your ordinance, it also refers to, the exceptional narrowness, shallowness, shape, topography, or other extraordinary or exceptional situation, condition, or circumstance of a particular property. I can't think of anything else other than the entire corner cut off by a sewer line. I mean, based on these elements, this lot qualifies for a variance. Granted, nobody on the street wants it, so you'll probably deny it. But given this information, it seems to me that the lot qualifies for the variance.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll entertain those that are interested in testifying against the variance. I actually know your name very well, but
Barry Kessler's
yeah.
my name. I have resided at 1745 Main Street for 37 years. This is very near and dear to the people in the neighborhood. I will tell you that for sure. It sounds as though no matter what happens, they're going to do it anyway, which really kind of shoots a hole in what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, okay? There's been a lot of conversation about an easement plat situation. Something I don't know anything about. But I can tell you that the certified letter that I got had nothing to do with an easement. I was not asked to consider an easement at all. And what is before you, is not about an easement on your agenda. It's a separate issue. They're not making as much of an issue about it this evening, but they've made it a big issue in the past. But that's not what you're voting on tonight. The area is zoned residential, as you all know, except for that one lot. The response from nearby neighbors has been overwhelming against it. And they've been consistent in that feeling. And I really feel that the neighborhood is responding to the request much like any other neighborhood in this town would react. Because what's being requested here is a variance for 3 sides of a structure to the to 3 required setbacks to construct a 50 by 70 foot building or a 3,500 square foot building. That's larger than any house in the neighborhood, quite frankly, larger than any home in town here. For the purpose of what? To house a welding shop and I don't know what else. I asked, does this fit in a residential area? Honestly. Will an industrial type business negatively affect the lives of the people living in the area? Is an appropriate place for this type of business? Regardless of what ordinance say, is it an appropriate place? In your heart, would you want it across the street from you? Welding businesses tend to accumulate a lot of stuff around the exterior of the building. There'll be noise problems, there'll be traffic problems. Will it negatively affect my property value? Will it negatively affect my ability to sell my home? My resale value? An industrial business will not improve the neighborhood's aesthetics at all. There must be a more suitable place for this business than at the end of a neighborhood. The zoning of that one lot may have worked in 1940, 1950, or the early 60s when that was the way to Deadwood. It is no longer that. It's been over 60 years since that road was used to go to Deadwood. Will this make this area more attractive? Which is in part of your mission statement the city has. Naturally, I'm going to ask you to deny this request. Once that structure's there, it's there. Do the right thing. Let the people live in their homes, in their neighborhoods. I ask you to deny this request.
Thank you, Mr. Kessler. The only people that took the oath have now testified, so I guess at this point, I would like to have council or Board of Adjustment discussion. And I'd also like to refer back to the city attorney for procedure. Obviously, it's my understanding that we can only vote on the variance as it was presented with no changes.
May I respond now, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Yes. The issue before you are the 3 variances contained in the report. To entertain a different proposal would require notice to the surrounding property owners. They believed, based on their letter, that that is what was going to be considered tonight, and to consider something else or negotiate an agreement in an open council meeting would be unfair to them.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
I have a couple questions. Oh, thank you. So my first question is, when we look at highway service, which this is zoned, this property is zoned, correct? It also includes uses from general commercial 1 and general commercial 2. That's right?
Are you addressing me or are you addressing Mr. Smith?
I guess whomever can answer my questions.
That is correct.
Okay. And so going back to the report, we're looking at mainly, is it general commercial 1 or 2, the ordinances that we're using for this? I see general commercial 1 up here, right?
Highway service includes all of those uses allowed in general commercial 1 and general commercial 2.
Okay.
Highway service is generally the most open ordinance of those, of the 3.
So is it that we have to use either general commercial 1 regulations or general commercial 2 regulations in highway zoning? Or I'm just curious, because when you read through general commercial 1 and general commercial 2, I find that they're kind of in conflict. Because in general commercial 2, it states that in no case shall this district, general commercial 2, have businesses such as lumber sales, new and used car sales, service, and repair stations. So, but we're saying this doesn't fall under a service and repair station, right?
We're using the highway service zoning requirements, just noting that highway service also allows any of the uses in general commercial 1 and general commercial 2. So we're not using the general commercial
Okay.
various zoning designation.
Okay.
We're using the highway service.
So I guess my question is, we're only looking at the uses under highway service. We're not taking into consideration that general commercial 1 and 2 can kind of be folded into highway service, and that, so those regulations are no part of this. We're not to look at anything out of general commercial 1 or 2 in regard to this. I'm stating my confusion because I feel like there's just questions to me, because I feel like 2 is in conflict with 1, and what we're going off of is we're saying, you know, the garage repair is allowed and this is allowed, but in, you know, GC2, it states it's not allowed. It also states that there's percentages, you know, that 10% of the building cannot be used for manufacturing or fabrication. I'm sorry, I don't have that written down. It also talks about, you know, that that permanent buildings shall not cover more than 60% of the property. So is that effect? I'm sorry, I'm just not clear on
I guess the
the
best way
factors
to,
we're to consider.
the best way to look at this is take general commercial 1 and 2 and just set them aside. They don't mean anything, as highway service zone, as we see it, allows this type of business. Just noting that there are things that are not allowed in highway service that aren't written that are allowed in highway service, but are allowed in general commercial 1 and 2. So all those uses that aren't written in highway service from general commercial 1, I know this is confusing, are allowed in that.
Okay.
So like I said, it is the most rounded section of the commercial ordinance. So if you're just in general commercial, these are what you can do. If you're in highway service, you can do a lot more, because you can do everything that allows you here plus what it says. Did that help, or did that confuse you more?
Yes, no, that
Confused me.
that helped.
I am so
If
sorry.
I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think the short answer is this is a permitted use on this property for the purpose of your voting today. You're voting on not the use, but on the request for the setback.
Very good. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, can I voice a history lesson?
Yes.
This is for the Board of Adjustment and for the future councils. 30 years ago, I sat in a little bit different chamber than this, but the same procedures. When they rezoned Main Street from the corner of 4th to Senex. That property was rezoned for a specific purpose, to allow JP Cycle to come to town and use property on Main Street as a business. That's the only reason this property was ever rezoned. I, for one, was one of the only property owners that fought that. Therefore, the north side of the block between 5th and 6th is the only half a block in the entire zoning district that was zoned, remained residential. So my history lesson is, be careful of what you do in the future as a council, because it continues for over 30 years now to be an issue because the city council wouldn't listen then. Period. End of my history lesson.
Very good. Any additional discussion? If there's not, in the name of proceeding, is there a motion on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to deny the variance request.
We have a first. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a first and a second to deny the variance request. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, we're going to roll call vote this. I'll start with you, Preston.
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
I'm yes.
I'll abstain.
Mike?
No.
Wait. Motion was to deny.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
And Becca?
Yes.
So we have one abstention and, what is that? Seven yeses. Aaron's not here. So with that, the variance request has been denied, and we will adjourn as the Board of Adjustment and reconvene as the Sturgis City Council.
May I, one more time, Mr. Mayor?
Please, yep.
Based on council's action, I will prepare findings of fact, conclusions of law, and an order consistent with the council's decision and circulate it for comment, if that meets the pleasure of the council.
Makes sense to me.
Thank you.
Item 11 is reports. 11.1 is consideration to approve a second reading. This is a supplemental appropriation for the 2023 budget. I have Mr. Ainsley down for our staff report for the second reading.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. For the second reading of this ordinance, there have been no modifications from the original first reading 2 weeks ago. So in the interest of time, unless there are any questions, that's the end of my report.
Council have any questions for Mr. Ainsley on this supplemental appropriation? None being heard at this time. Is there public comment on this second reading? Yeah, this is supplemental appropriations. Yep. Sand's making his way up, it looks like.
Sam Monahan with Tom's Teas. The last meeting you guys had discussed the addition of $300,000 to your budget item for 2023 for the purchase of apparel, merchandise, souvenirs, etc. And I guess my question is specifically why you're purchasing that or what it's for. Is the city getting into the souvenir and apparel business? I believe that Tessa here had sent out an email earlier today to everybody, kind of going through the guidelines or questions of what we had on that. Did everybody get that?
And I thought I saw, Mr. Ainsley, did you respond to that?
Yes.
Yep. And I guess to help tee off the discussion, I think the vision of the council is the brand building is what the wing desk is, what that is intent is for, not to, we're hoping we're not going to be the people that be the distributors other than the Sturgis Superstore, but working with retailers and distributors throughout the Black Hills area to help get our brand out there and start bringing recognition to the wing desk at the next level.
So what do you do with that money? If you make any money, you invest $300,000. Are you hoping to make $600,000, or what are you going to do with that money when you make it?
General fund is where that would go to, I would believe. Is that a correct statement, Mr. Ainsley, is where that would go into?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the way that I look at it is that it's a direct conflict with local business. When you dump $300,000 into merchandise, it competes with a lot of the local businesses, including myself. So I'm just curious why the city wants to get into that.
Excuse me, Sam. So what you're saying is unfair business practice?
Yes,
Just to
is
clarify.
what it appears with that. I mean, in the past, the city's done a little here and there, but now this is full-fledged $300,000 investment, which is a large sum of money. My budget isn't anywhere near that for Rally Apparel. So that's a substantial chunk of change.
Mr. Ainsley, do you want to touch on the process of which we went through to when we gave the opportunity for people to retail these products and things like that, please?
Sure. This project came about after discussions on two different fronts. One being after meeting with several business owners and vendors following the rally and improvements that they wanted to see. The city council adopted, I think it was about 13 different priorities for the 83rd annual rally. One of which was to build the Wing Desk brand so that it is more recognizable. It has been 2 years now that the city has been using that. And in order to guarantee the success of our sponsorship program, it is noted that the Wing Desk brand has to become more recognizable so that it's ubiquitous with the Sturgis and the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. And so this is an effort to do that. The city has already invested several hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop that brand and also to protect its intellectual property from other entities that used to own competing intellectual properties. And so now for the first time, all the intellectual property is held by one house, which is the city of Sturgis. And so now that that investment has been made and that investment has been monetized through our development of our sponsorship program, That's where the city council recognized the need to ensure that the mark becomes even more recognizable and more desirable for sponsors as well as for the general public. So this is not seen as something that would be an ongoing, long-term use for the city, or not use, but an ongoing, long-term project for the city. But it's necessary to ensure that there's a significant amount of product that is available that has the city's IP on it. If we do not have that, then the public's investment in that intellectual property and the corresponding sponsorship revenue over the next several years is going to be significantly threatened. In doing so, there were also meetings with the Economic Development Corporation, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Downtown Foundation as part of the collaborative process on ways to try to enhance local businesses' abilities to stay open during the rally, because we face a significant issue with smaller businesses that have to move out during the rally, and how are they able to necessarily get the product that's necessary to make the sales so that they can pay their rent payments and still be operational. That's something that has been long brought up as a hindrance for businesses to ever be able to open downtown. And so it's been noted that that needs to be addressed so that businesses are able to actually stay open and operating year-round, even if they're not necessarily a souvenir business. So with that, the idea came up that if there was a consignment that was offered so that those businesses would not have to necessarily invest in merchandise that is not intrinsic with their actual or their regular sales channels, but they would actually be able to purchase or have product available for sale and not actually have to diminish their regular holdings. It would allow them to be able to continue to be in operations. So that is where the concept originated from and is starting to proceed down that path. With that being said, the city has not finalized any of the purchasing of the product yet, because we're waiting to ensure that there's budget authority so that the product can be purchased. Just to put it in perspective, last year the city did almost $80,000 worth of product sales online. So it's not that it's the first time the city's done anything. This is larger than what we did in the past, but also it would be working with other retail channels to make sure that we're getting the brand out. And so that's why it's a larger sum than we've used in the past. And also it's definitely seen as an economic development incentive for local businesses that have said that they would like to carry product and hopefully make some sales as well.
So with the, so where did the $300,000 come up with? Where'd you come up with that dollar amount? If you did 80,000 last year and you're doing 300,000 this year, and it's unclear what you're going to do going forward, it just kind of seems like you're throwing a dart at the wall and hitting 300,000.
The goal of this is to exceed 3 times the amount of sales of what we had last year. And so that's the idea of the 300,000. With that, almost all the product would not be dated. The goal is not to have dated product. We're trying to get the Winged S out and available, so it's not going to be a lot of product that has the 83rd annual motorcycle rally, but instead the Winged S, so that that becomes more recognized. So if it does take longer than one rally season to sell, then it would be available next year as well.
Go ahead.
Do you have another?
No.
Because I'm going to be different. Is this on? Okay. First of all, I apologize that you all have to sit through this because it's already very long. So I did email everybody today, and Daniel did take the time to respond. Thank you for doing that. I just wanted to send you out on your last meeting with like all the things to reply to. But so I appreciate all the responses. I don't agree with all the responses, and I don't agree with the budget because I don't feel like it's, I mean, we spend a lot of time on an annual basis making sure that we don't lose money, because when you're talking about a fleeting event during the year, you have a very limited time to sell something before it becomes irrelevant. And whether it's dated or not, certain things the reason we date things is because people then buy it this year, but they will also buy it again next year, and they need to replace it to have the date on it. If you purchase a lot of product that's undated, it can be great product, but nobody's going to buy the same thing the next year because they already purchased it. So I have issues with that. My other issue is with the $300,000 budget. If you did $84,000 online last year, and I don't know if you keystone like the rest of us do, I guess I don't know where you build it in, but at some point, part of that has to be cost. So even if you, let's say you keystone for a second, if anybody knows what a keystone is, you take the cost of a product and you multiply it by twice. So like if it was a $50 cost, it'd be a $100 retail item. So if you were to keystone, you made $84,000 online, $40,000 was your cost of that. So even if you triple that for next year, your budget for cost of goods should be $120,000, not $300,000. So that's one, I just feel like it's a lot of money. Our budget for last year, we did what we spent on just dated merchandise, and we do have some undated. The younger crowds don't really care about the date. They want just something that says Sturgis. But we were far under that, and that's our main business, and we were far under that. And I know you're a city and you want everybody to see the brand, but you're also competing with a bazillion brands, so I feel like that's a lot of money. Let's see. So other questions I have is, like, so Daniel had responded to the coins that are still on sale, and he said that the number that it lists on your website is saying there's 450 available. Still, like, things do not sell after the fact unless they are a collector's item. Like, we sell a few pins after the fact, but we lose money on every extra item. Like, we got shot glasses last year, a week before the rally, 1,200 of them, and tried to get them out. And I paid $5 a piece to get them in because it was COVID repercussions. We are sitting on still $905 shots. Like, that's just one item, and we have hundreds of items. But to have the city then have to sit on those items and have it be taxpayers' dollars that you're like, so that's my mom's business, and she has to eat that, and she hasn't fired me yet. But like, who do you hold accountable for that? Like, I feel guilty about that. But when you're using taxpayer dollars and you shoot for the stars, like, I feel like it's better. I'm not saying don't do it. Don't promote the brand, which I know Sam just says don't promote the brand, and that's fine. I get his point too. But I think more than anything, until you have like an actual person who has taken the time to pick the products that are actually going to sell, and you know they're going to sell, and you start small and like build from there.
People that have been on the front lines.
Yeah.
And know how it works.
It's heartbreaking when you lose a ton of money, and every year on something we lose a ton of money. And even if it's undated, if it didn't sell this year, it's certainly not selling next year. Like, it's a very hard business when you're talking about an event or a fleeting like thing like this.
And consignment is a very slippery slope, because you can get all that product back, everything.
And you will get most of it back.
Yeah.
So we consign
take,
too.
they'll take 10,000 shirts. Who's going to say, you have to regulate how much somebody's going to take, because, somebody's going to go out there and say, okay, I want 5,000 of those shirts. All right, that sounds great. But then when the rally's over, you're going to get 4,500 of them back. And then what do you do with that?
And then you sit on it. And we have people that do that. We wholesale a ton of things across half the state, but we do have consignment through we have a rep that comes during the rally who sells to the little vendors that come. But what you'll find is that people will sell the products that they have in stock that they cannot give back before they will sell the items that they can give back, because they want to make money, but they also don't want to get stuck with product. And so then we will get tons of things back if it's a bad year. And then, so no matter how we were sitting last day of rally, then that following week, it all comes back. And clean or not, and it's not usually clean. It's usually very gross from tents and like disgusting.
Damaged.
But damaged. And you can say, oh, you can't bring that back, it's damaged. They don't care. They've already left town. Like, they're not going to pay for it. I think it needs to be better thought out. I think $300,000 is a ton of money. I have, obviously, and I'm not going to go through it all for the sake of time, but I had like 31 points, and we have 3 full-time staff that do this year-round, and our budget is smaller. And it's our main business, and it still feels like throwing it at a problem and hoping that, well, hopefully that'll brand recognition, because then it's a marketing budget. for a brand that I think people are coming, I think we've determined during COVID, people are coming whether we have a brand or not. Like, we've determined with the brand that we already pay royalties to the city for, which we're happy to do. Like, people like a brand, but they're gonna buy whatever they buy. It doesn't really, it's not gonna make the rally better or not better or worse.
And I think the Winged S, the problem with the Winged S is it's more of a brand that is something that you put on a product to give away, to build your brand. It's not something somebody really wants to purchase as a collectible to take home. I mean, they're not sitting in a bar with their buddy, hey, look at my Winged S. You know, they're, to represent Sturgis, they're gonna pick, you know, whatever. Bikers tend to like more of the
A naked girl.
right,
Skull.
wild, a crazy design. But the Winged S is pretty simple, and it hasn't been a big seller for us. And it confuses the public. You know, there's a lot of different brands out there. We have the royalty, or we pay the royalty to use the official logo, as well as Tessa, and we get a lot of people coming in the store that want to know, you know, why is there so many different things going on here? What's the deal? So brand recognition is a tough one, and like Tessa said, if all the people in town here say there's 1.5 million t-shirts that are being sold in this town, they don't care if there's a Winged S or a logo or the official logo. It's very difficult, very competitive.
And I think it's a fine logo. I just don't think you need to spend that much money on it. Also, very against the idea of selling these products at the community center because people already hate rally products. So putting them in a space where they come to play like sports is, I feel like that's a hard sell. But those are my 2 cents. I hope that you vote for less money if you decide to put it in the budget.
So when you spoke at the downtown committee, I sort of understood that you were going to develop a program where you got other people's product and helped distribute it. And I had said, well, that doesn't work for us because if you're consigning stuff that I'm selling outright to other people, they're going to get it through you where they can return it. So it would not work for us. I didn't understand that what you were saying is we would like you to develop our logo and help us promote our logo. I have a logo that I've been promoting. I started in, you know, the 50th, and it's still going. It's a great logo. It's got recognition. People buy it. People collect it. You know, it's new every year, different colors. It's dated, and that's what collects. So to me, this doesn't enhance my business, and I am not interested in selling it through my business because I do better with my product that's established. And so to me, it's competition to my business, what you're doing here. It seems like really what you're trying to do is market this brand. And I'm not sure if you're going to spend $300,000 if there's not, I don't know, some other way of marketing than a lot of product with the logo. I don't know. I guess it's for you to find out. And I mean, I have a website, and I know how much work it is for a website. And if you want to do $80,000 on a website, so be it, because it's a lot of work. And it takes a lot of manpower, and it's expensive to ship. And, I mean, there's just so many things involved that I guess as a taxpayer, I would not want you investing that kind of taxpayer money in something like this. A smaller budget as you're getting going, maybe. I don't know. And you know, I don't have an accounting of how much was ordered of your stuff and how much sold of your stuff and how much is left of your stuff, how much is still sellable because it's not dated. I have no idea about any of that, but I do know how it works for my business. And I mean, there's a lot to it. So I think that's why we're questioning whether or not this is a appropriate amount of money. but I recognize that you have to do whatever to, you know, try and promote.
Sorry, she's used to me doing this. Also, I would just note that Daniel had said that you're just going to use your existing staff to do this because last year they sold however many cups. Cups are super different than actual t-shirts in different sizes and pins and patches and things that come in packaging and things that come in broken. And it's like, if you're trying to increase your business by 3 times as much, it's very hard to put that same amount of work on the one person who was doing it prior, who's already stretched thin, because you guys do a lot of different events during the rally. So if you are planning to do this, I would say invest and do it right and have someone who is paying attention and knows what's selling, what isn't, who's marketing, like going out, like we spend our whole year, and also half the products we order before Christmas. So the fact that you're just now getting started on that, you may end up getting products very late in the game, and then you will sit on them for an entire year or so.
Well, and there's the invoicing, and then the getting product back and doing the returns, and I mean, it's just a lot when you do consignment. It's, you know, I just don't know if you have a business model set up that's going to be successful, and whether or not it needs more work, you know, to be successul. And I want the city to be successful. I'm trying to help by paying royalties, but anyway, that's kind of what our concerns were and things that we think you should consider in, you know, adding this amount of money to your budget.
Thank you.
Any questions or?
Any further discussion from council?
This has been interesting discussion. You know, I heard several times that that the amount was far above what any of our existing businesses' budgets have been. I guess I'll defer to continue my comments until Allison has a chance to address the.
Hi, so I'm Allison. I came today, but not for this. I just want to say, I do think it's unfortunate that the city didn't use Tom's logo. That's will always be my logo, how I identify Sturgis. But I do think $300,000 is too much money on this. If we have that kind of money, then I don't need to be worried about painting faces to raise money for kids, sports expansion or the park or bike or anything like that. And I think if they sold $800,000 last year, then just double it for this year. See if you can double your sales with the same amount of employees working on that. And I think it's too much, and I think it's too much work, and I think the city would be in over their heads. Thanks.
I see it's almost 8 o'clock and the interstate will be closing, so I do need to run fast.
You will get stuck.
Unless, Jody, you want to make a phone call for me out to the?
Saying it doesn't work. I tried it. He says, stay put. Kevin, go ahead and finish.
We discussed this. This is our second reading. We didn't have this active discussion at our first reading. This is, in my mind, good information. And I think for those reasons, I would like to see us gather more information, and I would make a motion that we table this until our next meeting so that we can gather more information and make better decisions, hopefully more informed decisions on the purchase of rally merchandise.
I'll second.
Sorry. Go ahead.
We got a first by Kevin, a second by Mike, and a third by Tony to table the second reading of the supplemental appropriation. When we have a procedural motion to table, there's no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. Brings us to second reading of Title 7, Title 14, and Title 26. Got Mr. Marshall down as a staff report, I believe.
Wait, Mr. Mayor, so we're tabling the whole supplemental?
That was the motion, yep. Yep.
We can't break it apart, correct?
Well, we could have. Too late now, though.
I thought it was a,
Yeah, variance is the one you can't change the provided ordinance. We'd have had to go back to a first reading. But as we
We're going to have to now, I believe, right?
if we change, yeah. No further discussion after table the motion to table, so that's where we're at. Back to you, Mr. Marshall, on second reading of Title 7, 14 and 26.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was not present last week during the meeting due to some health concerns. What you have in the packet today are the suggested amendments to those titles, but placed in a form of an ordinance, where it states that this section is repealed and replaced by the following section. I had understood there were concerns about the absence of a definition of administrative services, but I see that was included in the initial reading, the first reading, and that there was one other provision that I believe Councilor Jordan had a question about, and that was the composition of the downtown bid board, that it be no less than 5 and no more than 7 members, and that was included. I apologize because there was an awful lot of information in the initial report. My intent was to provide context for those and not confusion, and I didn't succeed as much as I'd hoped. But there are no substantive changes between the first and second readings, and with that I would urge the council to approve the second reading.
Any questions from council for Mr. Marshall or discussion as a whole? How about public input on this matter? Second reading of Title 7, 14, and 26. No further discussions. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the second reading of ordinance 2023-3, Title 7.
second?
We got a first and a second. We got a first by Becca, second by Dean. For the second reading of the changes to the ordinances described in the agenda. Any last discussion? Public or council? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries unanimously. For roll call, please. That'll be published in the paper and become valid 20 days after that publish. Item 11.3 is to consideration to approve a one-year contract addendum with the labor unions in the city of Sturgis. I have Mr. Ainsley down, so I'll turn it back over to you, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. One of the council priorities during this transition period was to finalize a one-year contract extension with the 2 bargaining units within the city employees. I was able to meet with Deb as well, representing the city with the 2 bargaining units, their business agents, and also their stewards. They have agreed to what I believe is a fairly mutually beneficial agreement, which is a one-year addendum that maintains the general terms of the existing collective bargaining units agreements. Includes a 3.5% cost of living increase for January of 24, a 60-40 cost share for any increased health insurance premium. Previously, it was always a 50-50. However, this January, we did experience an incredibly high increase. Thankfully, we have not had a significant increase in about a decade, but finally our luck ran out, and we had a price increase that do you remember what it was, Faye? or Lisa, I think it was like 18%. So it was fairly significant. So some of this, I think, is kind of the hangover from that shock. So a 40% share, and so what that means is not the entire healthcare premium would be split 60-40, but it's just the increased cost in January would be split 60% paid by the city, 40% by the employee. And also a one-time ratification bonus paid to all full-time employees or benefited employees as of today. That would be $350, and then a $500 bonus for any employee that's at the top of their wage scale, which is essentially at 23 years. We counted today, I think that's a total of 15. Okay, that was more than we originally thought, but 15 employees that have been with us for 23 years. So 15 would get a $500 bonus. Those are the general terms. Those have been included in the preliminary 24 budget that has been sent out to the department heads that they are finalizing now. And so overall, if you look, this is pretty much in line with what the city has done in the past. We did have a very high COLA that the city granted this January. It was a 7% COLA, but that was to try to keep up with the market changes that have been happening. We're hoping that that becomes a little more normalized across the entire kind of Black Hills region. So hopefully next year it's not as significant. So the 3.5% increase. But overall, this is something that the city will be able to, fund next year, but also will ensure that Sturgis continues to be an employer of choice, that we are competitive with the surrounding communities, and hopefully employees will continue to work for us. Are there any questions? Oh, this has been ratified by both bargaining units. And so if the council agrees to it today, then it would be able to go into effect, and that item would be crossed off your list.
Any further discussion from council on this one-year addendum? Is there a motion?
I would move to approve.
First by Mike.
I'll second.
Second by Preston. Any last discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. Brings us to 11.4. This is consideration to approve a development agreement with the Garden Grove developers. With the Garden Grove development. And back to you, Mr. Ainsley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And before I start the staff report on this, I would just like to note that this is something that is kind of growing out of current litigation that involves the city. So I just want to ensure that everyone understands that there's no assumption of any liability to any claims that is coming from this, but this is simply the city trying to cover all bases, no matter what might occur from that litigation. But approximately 10 years ago, or actually, I'm sorry, not approximately, it was 10 years ago, the city entered into an agreement with Davenport Ranch that was an annexation and development agreement, and so property was annexed into the city, and the city paid for approximately $500,000 worth of infrastructure that was installed along along some property that ended up becoming dedicated public right-of-way, and that's Davenport Loop. I think, Shannon, if that's right, Davenport Loop is the name of that street now, where that infrastructure was installed. So that nearly $500,000 investment paid for the sewer mains, the water mains, as well as natural gas lines and electrical lines that were installed along that. The city assisted in, or actually paid for all of that, in a way to help catalyze development in that area. So we had a signed agreement with the previous, or with the property owner at that time, that stated that the property would be placed up for sale at a price that was not more than, I think it was 10 or 15% more than the appraised value of the land. That way development could start to be catalyzed and start to spur there. Unfortunately, that didn't occur for quite some time. There's an ongoing issue trying to enforce that. after the city had installed that $500,000 worth of infrastructure. Ultimately, in order to ensure that the ratepayers received some reimbursement for that, an assessment was passed, and that assessment was an additional $3,000 tap fee that every new structure was required to pay in that subdivision. That way the ratepayers could receive back their initial investment that they paid into that. So the first phase of Davenport, that has already occurred. Once you look at that, as well as an assessment that was paid by the property owners, the ratepayers had been reimbursed largely. And so at that time, the city was looking at removing that additional assessment for the phase 2. That phase 2, if you might remember, has been approved by the city council, and there was a TIF as well. That was done, I think, probably about 30 to 60 days ago, in that time range. Unfortunately, the previous landowner has filed some action against the city, challenging that assessment that was made on the property, even though those assessments have been paid. So while that is in court, there is obviously a potential that the city may have to reimburse some or all of that assessment. So as such, if there was such a ruling, then the ratepayers would not be made whole from their investment. So the city has stated that it is not willing to take away that additional tap fee, being that that is how the ratepayers would be reimbursed. The developers now have asked that the city make a commitment that if the case is settled in favor of the city and the assessment is not repaid, then at that point, then the additional $3,000 tap fee that is for the second phase would be reimbursed to the developers. This would ensure that the ratepayers, no matter what, are reimbursed, and also that it's not an undue burden if the city is victorious in the lawsuit. So with that being said, the staff does recommend approval of the agreement that would just ensure that in 12 or 18 months, whenever the case is settled, that if it is settled on the city's behalf, then at that point we would reimburse the developers for that additional tap fee. If, on the other hand, it is not settled in favor of the city, then we would retain that in order to ensure that the ratepayers are close to made whole. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Daniel. How about public input or developers' input? We cover it pretty well. Yep. Questions, comments, concern, public or council? Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the development agreement with Garden Grove Development.
First by Becca.
Second.
A second by Dean. Any last discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries for that development agreement. Item 12.5 is consideration to approve and sign water utility board agreement with the MUB. I've got Mr. Marshall down again, so back over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city had an agreement with the MUB that expired in 2018. And since that time, the city and the MUB have orally continued the terms of that agreement. The purpose of this agreement is to, again, memorialize that relationship. It has no financial impact on the city and allows a term of 20 years. That term seems unusually long, but there is a stopgap measure that allows it to be renegotiated at every 5 years or upon the demand of either party. So it simply memorializes the status quo and has been already approved by the MUB. With that, staff would recommend that the council authorize Mr. Ainsley to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
Questions from council for staff? memorializing this agreement. How about public input? Questions, comments, concerns? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Got a first by Preston,
Second.
second by Kevin. Any last discussion? Public or council? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. Brings us to item 12, other matters that may come before the council. Short period of time here for non-agenda items. Let's go ahead and start with the council tonight. Does anybody have anything to add that's not on the agenda you want to bring up briefly?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say that given this is Daniel's last meeting as our city manager, I wanted to tell him that your hard work and your years of service to our community is so appreciated. I came across the quote that states, "Good people do things for other people," and I think that that perfectly describes Daniel and his family and everything that they have given and continue to give to our town. Daniel, you've gone above and beyond in your job, and our town would not be where we are without the work that you've done these last 12 years. So I just want to say sincerely, thank you so much for all you've given to the city of Sturgis.
For sure. Agree 100%, and thank you, Becca, for sure. Anything to add from council side? How about public side?
Well, just because I'm Charlie Wheeler, and just because I like to lighten things up with jokes, Daniel, your first report to the evening was either your best or your worst. I'm not sure which, but I did come to say thank you for everything that you've done, no matter what other people might think. I think there are many more people in this community that are appreciative, and so I just want to say thanks.
Thanks, Charlie.
Daniel, please extend that to your family as well. I know it's been some difficult times for you and the family. We wish you well. Hopefully this will move you to a better place.
How about other things before the council for the public? I do know we have a request for executive session. I don't believe there's any action anticipated, Mr. Marshall, is there? Is that what that means on the backside?
There is no anticipated action, Mr. Mayor.
With no further council matters before the council, is there a motion for moving to executive session?
So moved.
Got a first by Dean.
Second.
Second by Tony. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. We're off to exec. It's 8:17. We'll start. All right, we're back in regular session out of exec. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
We have first by Dean,
Second.
second by Angela. All those in favor to adjourn, please indicate by stating yes.
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 Opposed to no. We're adjourned. 8:51.
Supposed to go live at 9:30.